My name is Rich Schmidt. We're here with Andrew Miner and Cassie Salinas. It's August 12th, 2024. We're at the Oregon Wine Reserve in Lake Oswego. Andrew, Cassie, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate this.
Thank you.
First question, either of you can start, is why wine?
Wow, why wine? Well, I mean, I actually started in the wine business back in 2003. So I started actually when I was still in college as a delivery driver. So I just kind of fell in love with it, started getting into some really good food. And I was a delivery driver for a small little distributor here in Portland that is no longer around. And then worked my way as sales reps and for different distributors over time. And just kind of fell in love with the industry. And we love to travel. So we really like to go to places where there's wine, there's good food. I think that's mine at least.
I'm curious. I'm like, why did you apply for that job when we were in college?
That's actually even a good question too. Honestly, I don't know. I was at Portland State. I was managing a swimming pool. We both went to Portland State together. That's where we met. We've been together for 24 years now. Married for 14.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we just had our 14th anniversary a month and a half ago. I don't know. It just sounded interesting. Wine just sounded kind of mysterious. I mean, my parents always drank wine. They were wine club members at a few places. They're still members at Willamette Valley Vineyards. I think it was just one of those like, oh, this sounds kind of interesting, and maybe it would come to something, and it did. And that was back in 2003.
Well, I think too, you were studying business. I mean, I think that was
studying business, studying communications. It just seemed kind of it seemed like an interesting field, and I had no idea about the industry. I had no idea like where you could go and what you could do within the industry. So it was all kind of new to me, and it kind of exploded into something that now we collect wine, I guess. Or maybe just I have a really bad problem of purchasing a lot of wine. It just kind of exploded into something kind of fun. How about for you?
Why wine? I mean, I do feel guilty by association. I mean, again, being with somebody for so long, you start to like pick up similar habits or similar, I don't know, just your environment is also a byproduct of the human you spend your time with. And this is one of the humans I spend the most time with. And I will say that, early on, I remember when Andy got the first job working for this company, Lago de Merlot. He was I was a Northern Californian wine producer, and I remember
their own distributing company here, and then they started picking up other brands on top of that. It was a guy named Harry Merlot. He was the CEO of Louisiana Pacific back in the day. He had like 6,000 acres in Sonoma, and then he had another 20 acres here, so in Oregon.
Yeah, and through that job, which I'm still a little like, God, why did we come back from, we finished college and we did a backpacking trip through Europe. That was like our first thing that we did when we finished, and we were young and babies, but he got his first job, and I thought to myself, why is he leaving this amazing trip? We're backpacking through Europe, but he goes, I got my first job, and I'm gonna go be a distributor working for this company. And ever since then, I was invited to holiday parties or wine dinners or experiences to where, I was getting exposed to the wine that you were selling and that you were sharing with the world. And often, a lot of the wine companies you worked for, or small wineries, they are really family-run businesses. And so significant others, partners, girlfriends, friends really do get included. And I felt actually very included in the multitude of jobs that you held. And kind of thinking about our lives, the last 24 years of that experience has been a big portion of our relationship, is being a part of that journey and supporting you. I also feel like I've learned a lot just by your own wine education. I mean, there's the studying that Andy does, the investment that you put into speaking about the wines, the intentionality, the heart, everything that you do to sell the product. I hear about it. I hear about it either through his sales conversations or through dinner parties that we host or through just your life experience. So I just feel like I've been a part of it. Interesting enough, in a chapter in my life, I had studied communications and marketing, and I was able to actually support, I think you'd work for Basil Cellars at the time, and they were needing some marketing and social media support and actually PR. So they wanted to help tell the story of their new winemaker who wasn't going to be he wasn't in the family. And so they were trying to figure out how to get more exposure for him. So I did some as a side hustle, I did a little bit of pitching. Oh yeah, I pitched some stories about Ned. Was it Ned? Is that what, yeah. So a wonderful opportunity for me to get exposure around the food scene in Seattle, food scene up in the Washington area, because it was a Washington winery based out of Walla Walla, and that they put trust in me around what it was to tell their story. So I actually have a lot of admiration for the opportunity to tell winemakers and the winery stories. Very small winery that I got at.
Yeah. We when I was at Basil Cellars, it was, I think we were doing like 8,000 to 10,000 cases a year. So I mean, not super small, but yeah, fairly small on the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and even with that job, I remember before you got hired, they invited me out and us out to come meet the family and connect with everybody. It is a bit of a cultural fit, right? And getting to know who's going to be selling our wine, who's going to be on the road. And at that time, you were the national salesperson, and there's a few of us in this industry who are significant others, and I'm not the one who coined the phrase, but I have been known as the traveling wine widow because the partner is gone for more than half of the year, and so there is this kind of need to feel connected to the winery themselves and know that the time away from our home and household is time worth spent, I guess.
Yeah, I did national sales for like 7 years, so it was like, being on the road kind of constantly. You're over on the road half the year, just traveling state to state, working with distributors across the country, working with sales reps, doing wine dinners, doing tasting events. I would always try to book as much as possible. If I'm making the investment to go out there, might as well get a couple dinners or a couple tasting events on top of it, on top of working full days, seeing a bunch of accounts. So it was like a lot packed into a 3-4 day trip sometimes. So. And
what I feel really lucky is that at the time when that was happening, I had transitioned. I had been working and doing marketing and communications for a nonprofit, and I was able to travel with my job. So I had a telework position in the mid 2000s, like 2011, yeah. So I would go and pick my favorite. I'm like, I want to go to Austin, Texas. I've never been there. Let's go. Or like, let's go to New York City. Or back to Basil Cellars days, they had this amazing opportunity. I don't know if you want to talk about that, to take us to.
We went to China.
We went to China, and that was a really incredible experience.
Yeah, we were exporting some wine over to China. So the guy that was exporting the wine asked us if we wanted to go on one of their trips, and it was a 2-week-long trip.
And the relationship you brokered, that relationship?
Yeah, it was great. It was, there was a lot of lost in translation stuff going on while we were there, but the gentleman that was putting it on asked if we wanted to bring significant others, so she got to come for like a week, and I was there for 2 weeks, but it was a pretty fun experience, but a lot of moving parts and a lot of miscommunications on stuff, but it was pretty.
I mean, one of my favorite things. First of all, I would not even think to go to China to do wine education. We went with 3 other small wineries: Left Coast Cellars, I think White Rose.
Yeah, White Rose was there at the time.
It was one other winery that came with us. Curly.
Oh yeah, Hill Family from California. Yeah. So they were doing a handful of Oregon, Washington, and California wineries, exporting it into or importing into China, exporting from the U.S. So, yeah.
But that was like, I mean, I think the first opportunity where I got to see the cultural importance of wine. And then at that point, what year? That was 2011 or 2012. There was counterfeit wine being shared or purchased in China. And so this trip was to educate the Chinese community, mainly affluent Chinese community, around what it was to look for and know. I mean, there was education around like what
to look for on a bottle, what to look for, verify, always verify everything, make sure that like they have a legitimate website, make sure they have
or that it is grapes.
Yeah.
They were finding out that they were using synthetic product to actually make the wine. But it was such an incredible experience. I do think, we were, I don't know if you've traveled to China, but we got a very beautiful experience. We were wined and dined in the way that they really wanted us to see China in a very good light. So we definitely
got to see kind of the best of the best.
The best of the best. I mean, and that's so incredible experience, right? The fact that here I'm working for a small nonprofit. We don't have the means, but this person sponsored us to go over and experience this country and also see the beauty of what wine and people from different places who speak a different language can still bring us together. Yeah. So I feel like that moment to me was personally, I was just hungry for more. I mean, I now continue to advocate if we can do international trips to get connection to the wine and to the place. And it really enriches my personal experience with the wine.
So pick up back up there in a moment. We'll talk a little bit about life before you knew each other. Cassie, we'll start with you. Tell me about where you were born and raised and what brought you to Portland State.
Yeah, those are all great questions. Born and raised in McMinnville, Oregon. So Linfield College is right down the street from me. Although interesting, not accessible to me and my family. When I think about, I'm the first generation in my family to go to college. And I feel very fortunate that I come from a biracial family. So my father's side of the family is Mexican American. And my grandmother and grandfather came way of Mexico, but also had roots in Edinburgh, Texas. And in the early 60s, didn't see much opportunity for them and their 8 children, which included my father. My father and his 7 brothers and sisters and my grandmother and grandfather came to Carlton and Yamhill in 1963, knowing that there was an opportunity to do migrant work. That included berry picking. That was one of what we know. I think they were one of the kind of first pioneers of that kind of time frame to come out to Oregon. They did speak a little bit of English, and I think that allowed them to start to integrate into the community. But they felt isolated. I think also that there was a need to create more of their own, a space for their own. So they definitely, they started a church in, I think, was it Dayton or Amity? Where did they
helped start up the one, I thought it was in Carlton.
Might have been in Carlton. I'll have to find that information, but what it did is, for my dad's side of the family, it started to plant some new roots. And fast forward, my mom came to Oregon from way of Northern California, and both my father and mother met working at Diane's Tortilla Factory. And my mother didn't know this at the time, but was working alongside her soon-to-be mother-in-law and her sister-in-law. And meanwhile, my father was totally in love with my mother, but took him about 1.5 years to ask her out because he felt a tall white woman wouldn't fall in love with a Mexican Latino guy. But he pursued, and they fell madly in love, and they have been together for 49 years. And they built a beautiful place and home. And so it's just me, my mom and dad, but I have a multitude of cousins and family that live in the area, many of them who are still here. I feel very fortunate that I'm very close with my tias, and my grandparents have since passed away, but family is really important to me. But I will say growing up in McMinnville was an interesting experience, being somebody who was biracial, who felt maybe that I wasn't quite Mexican enough or, not white. So there was a lot of feeling of not belonging. And I remember that early on in my childhood. I remember that in my formative years. And I will say one of the things I worked really hard on is my friendships with people who maybe looked a little different or who came from different backgrounds. So I'm really really proud of those friendships and relationships. And I would say I still have best friends that are from McMinnville or that I met in middle school or elementary school, who I went to Dunaway Middle School. I think I was the first student to go through, and my dad also graduated from Mac High. And they're really connected to their community. My parents both turned 70 this year, and they are just living their best life. And they are having so much fun and appreciating the beauty of Oregon. My dad was a sheet metal fabricator and worked up in North Portland and commuted for about 40-something years, if not longer. So I didn't see him much. He left pretty early, like 3 a.m. to go to work. And so my mom raised me. She was a stay-at-home mom. But I grew up in this magical oasis right off of Cozine Creek, right
across from Linfield.
Right across from Linfield College. And, one of the things about coming from our family, unfortunately, higher education wasn't accessible. The path forward, knowing that what a FAFSA form is, or what it was to even, again, my father was blue collar, so the thought of going to higher education institution cost money, and it wasn't something that we had set aside money for. I feel really lucky, though, that there are a few friends that were starting to apply for college, and my parents were like, what is this thing called college? And I do credit those friendships and their drive to say, well, maybe I should be exploring something else outside of working at the Goodwill or Jake's Deli or Michael Buck Country Club, which is a job that I had in McMinnville. And when I realized that there was a thing called a scholarship, I feel really fortunate that I applied, and Portland State University had what was kind of a newer scholarship program called the Diversity Achievement Program. And so I received a 5-year full ride to Portland State, which included also the tuition, the books. I got my books paid for at least the first 4 years, or 3.5 years. I also got another scholarship midway through the Chicano Latino Studies program. But that really opened up an incredible opportunity for me and also my family, and also to be a beacon, I think, for many of my cousins. I'm in between. There's like Caesar and I that are in this middle range where we're not quite the oldest ones, but I'm also feel really lucky that I can be a mentor to my younger cousins. I was 17 and a half when I packed up my 1987 Toyota Camry and came to Portland, and my parents wish I would have come home more, but I knew that it was an opportunity for me to get out of town and also meet people, hopefully, who were more like myself. So that's where, really, quite frankly, I met Andy about 3 weeks into my first year at Portland State University. So I had just turned 18 and we met and started dating shortly after that.
Can you tell us about your life? Your life up to that moment?
We met my sophomore year. I grew up in Salem, actually. So I grew up in Salem. Again, like knowing a little bit about wine, but it definitely wasn't on my radar on things. And, that was in the late 90s. So the wine industry was still very, very young. I ended up going to Portland State. I ended up playing tennis at Portland State for a couple years. I was a lifeguard there, and I also managed the swimming pool later on at the rec center. And that's when I started looking for the jobs, and that's when I eventually got the job, but my first wine job. I played tennis for a couple of years at Portland State. I played tennis throughout high school and did a lot of different sports.
I did not do the sports.
Yeah.
Andy was the sport. You're the athlete. I had really really didn't have any clue of what I wanted to do. Like I had really no direction. I got in a little bit of trouble in high school, so that kind of sidetracked a lot of things. And then I ended up just applying later on, late in summer after I graduated, because I had no clue on what I wanted to do. And my parents were very, they were really great, even when I got into trouble. They were very great in the sense of
hey, your father, my dad basically was working all the time, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and they were like, we want to help you out with your schooling. So I had to kind of scramble in the summer because I thought I was just going to go to Chemeketa and do a couple years in college and just try to figure out where I wanted to go next and do something. And my parents were kind of like, we kind of want you out of the house though too. So I ended up going to applying for Portland State in like July of 1999 and got accepted like a couple months later. And I was already all of a sudden like packing everything and getting, once my job was done as a lifeguard in Salem, then packed it up and went to Portland. So so that's kind of how it kind of started. And then we met my sophomore year and her freshman year in college, and we've pretty much been together ever since. So that was in 2000.
Fellow class of 99 member here.
There we go.
Shout out to the class of 99. So tell me about, you mentioned wine was an accident. You got into wine. Tell me about getting interested in it, starting to learn more about it, and kind of the career trajectory from kind of the humble beginnings. What were the sort of the next big steps? Yeah,
so I started as a delivery driver, and I was doing that for about 6-8 months-ish. After I graduated, it turned into a sales job. So, and then it ended up turning into having another person helping out with deliveries and sales on top of it. And then, so I did that for this company, Lago di Merlo, for about 3 years. From there, I got an opportunity to actually sell beer for a little bit. So I worked for a big distributing company called, at the time it was Columbia Distributing. They were bought by Young's Market Company and whatnot down the road, but I sold beer for about a year. Then I had another opportunity to go back into distribution and worked for another distributing company. That was a horrible, horrible mistake. It was one of those distributing companies that you got bounce paychecks type thing, and like once everyone got their paycheck, they rushed to the bank to try to cash it. This was back in like 2007, 2006, and after like I got a job after that just totally imploded. I got a job with another distributing company called Vino, who was around for quite a few years, but that's also when I got a phone call from the Basil family from Basil Cellars in Walla Walla. They were looking for a national sales rep, and they had hired somebody. It didn't really work out. I was kind of the second choice of theirs, and it seemed like a really good opportunity to dip my feet into national sales, and still being pretty young in the business, it was a really good learning experience on what to do and what not to do. Really, really good family. And I did that for about 4 years, really got along with their son, Justin Basil, and it was a very big learning experience. The family got divorced, and it was kind of tumultuous. So I decided to start looking for other positions, and I ended up doing national sales in McMinnville at Walnut City Wine Works. So John Gilpin and John Davidson and Michael Lundeen, who had become their winemaker, he's now taken over that whole space on 17th. Subsequently, that's actually where we make our wine too. So everything kind of comes full circle. I was with Walnut City for about 3 years doing national sales for them. Wanted something a little bit more local. I was traveling a lot, and for the 7 years that I did it, from one job to another, there was really no break in between. So I was doing national sales for about 7 years, traveling all over the U.S. and internationally. So it was a good change of pace. I went back into distribution, got a job with, at the time it was Young's Market Company, which got purchased the consolidation of the wine business is kind of crazy. So they end up purchased by R&DC, Republic National Distributing Company, and that's what they are today. But I came on board with them because a friend of mine was leaving a position. It was like an internal overlay position with Trincaro Family Estates, which big Napa, California company, and they needed someone to do like the on-premise in Portland. So I did that for a little over a year, and then they needed a manager for the Estates Group, which is their fine wine division. So I came on board with the Estates Group team within Young's in 2016, and I did that for about 2.5 years up until 2018. And then had a little nice summer off, and then ended up going to work for another Walla Walla producer called Proletariat Wine Company and Roti Cellars. So mainly Proletariat, and I was helping Sean with a little bit of his Roti stuff, but helping out, and did Proletariat for about 3 years. Up and through the pandemic and getting furloughed, and it was a challenging time. They were a keg wine company, and in 2019 we finally got it into bottle, and we were like, man, 2020 is going to be a great year. We all know what 2020 was like. And then fast forward to now, I started with Vintus. It's an import company. So I had an opportunity to go jump on board with them back in it's been 3 years, so that would be 2021. Yeah, so I had an opportunity to jump on board with them in the summer of 2021, and I've been there since. I've been there for 3 years now. But we represent about 6 different domestic brands, and then we import. Gosh, now it's like 44 different imports, which it's growing. It seems like every week. We've picked up a brand called Chateau d'Espelon out of Provence. The wine's called Roseblood. It's the former Prime Minister of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, and his wife Carla Bruni. We just picked that up at the beginning of the year. We've picked up William Fevre out of Chablis. We represent all Group Bollinger or Bollinger. Ponzi Vineyards, which is owned by Bollinger, and all their properties in France. The Gigal family out of the Rhone Valley. Ornellaia, all the Frescobaldi wines. So Ornellaia, Attems up in Friuli, Ornellaia in Bulgari, Tenuta Luce in Bulgari, and Massetto, which is probably one of the most coveted Italian wines out there. But yeah, it's a pretty amazing book. Our leadership team has really put together a really, really incredible portfolio, and it's our 20-year anniversary this year. So yeah, pretty fun stuff. Just keep on moving up, I guess, over time. Yeah.
We'll pick back up there in a second, but Cassie, bounce it over to you for a second. Tell me about your sort of career trajectory parallel to that.
Yeah, and so, we have our own wine business, and we can talk about that here shortly. But I would say I feel really fortunate. I currently serve as the Deputy Director for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion for Metro, which is our regional government here in Portland, Oregon. I've been at Metro for 12 years, and prior to stepping into that role, I was doing strategic communications and marketing for an NGO. I held that role for about 5-6 years, maybe a little bit longer. That took my work all over the country, and also did some international work. Got my hands around so many different projects, from doing video campaigns to working with celebrities like Mos Def and Tatiana Ali, to which was encouraging people to get out to vote. We actually just found an archive video from when one of the crew members interviewed Kamala Harris for if she was to become president. So feeling really proud and honored that I got to work on something like that. I also did.
What year was that?
I think it was like 2009.
That's cool.
And I worked on a project in Washington, D.C., where we brought together then U.S. Senator Barack Obama and U.S. Senator John McCain on a campaign around broadband policy. This was before they ran against each other. I feel really honored I got to work with some pretty innovative change makers who were thinking about how there is this large digital divide for low income and communities of color, and how if we don't address that issue, that there's larger disparities around information, around homework. And we saw what happened with the pandemic and getting access to information. Everything was becoming online at that point. Desktops were just a main tool and device. But I got to do a lot of different things. And previous to that, my first job out of college was with the Portland Business Journal. So I did a great deal of event planning. We planned these cool events, Power Breakfast Series or the Orchid Award, and celebrated women and women in business, to bringing in keynote speakers from all over different business industries. But I feel like one of the things that has been a through line in my career is always who is sitting around the table when you're making decisions, who's a part of your conversations, how are you engaging people who are the most marginalized in any either marketing campaign or content creation, or for us right now, the work that I'm doing around the policies and programs that Metro operates, which is a multitude of different programming. We're a very large government agency, and I feel like my early childhood around not belonging really is the work that I do, is creating a deeper sense of belonging in the workplace, providing the resources and the means in my department. I feel very fortunate. I have a department of 11 who are incredible people. They are their own leaders, really trying to hold the line around how do we think about equity, diversity, and inclusion in institutions that weren't designed for us. So it's a lot of systems change work. It's a lot of changing hearts and minds, and a lot of just a lot of hard work, I guess, is really what it is.
Can you give an example of something you've done at Metro that you're proud of?
Adopting a very progressive policy that's called the Strategic Plan to Advance Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. It was adopted in 2016, and that we at the time had a council that was maybe a little bit older, a little less diverse, and they really believed in what we were doing. And for us to do years of work to bring community to the table, where community felt that their voices were heard and elevated, and that their priorities were seen, and that to have the highest decision makers listen and say, we are going to adopt a policy like this and we're going to invest in this work, I think was a huge milestone in the work that I've held. I was at the center of all of that and worked alongside some incredible people who I admire and love, and feel like that was a huge lift. And now the fact that I helped advocate for a department in an institution, so the fact that we have a budget and programming and staffing to do this type of work says a lot. And so I feel like that is the real change work, is to ensure that we're not just doing it based off a volunteer basis, and it's not just lip service. So I feel like that was a really proud moment, is having that policy adopted, and now we're heading into a new refresh of that strategic plan. So very proud of it. But yeah.
It's impressive. Wow.
Yeah, but also alongside that, and what I've learned in the work that I do, is that burnout is real. Women, particularly women of color, who are in many different jobs or hold a lot of different jobs, that we have to find moments of joy. And one of the things that when Andrew and I were chatting about 6 or 7 years ago, of like, what could it look like for us to do business together, I was thinking, this could be fun. This could be something fun that gives me a creative outlet, and also gives me an opportunity to to do things that aren't so much like it allows me to be more, I would just say, creative, because we get to do a lot of fun things in the way that aren't within the parameters of a regional government. But we get to build a lot of community and have a lot of just, amazing opportunities to kind of merge all of our worlds and bring people together that wouldn't sit at a table together and have a glass of wine. And I still feel like the work of equity, the work of inclusion, I really infuse that in everything that we do in our business.
So we'll pick up the business in a second, because I have lots of questions about that. But before we get to that, Andrew, I'm curious about, as your career evolved, tell me about selling wine, especially on a national level.
Yeah.
What sells wine? What are people attracted to? And when you're doing that kind of work, that kind of travel, how do you stay engaged and excited in the work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, we all know stories. Stories sell wine. So anytime you have some kind of story, and especially if it's a story that like maybe it's not a very common knowledge story, something that you have intimate connection with with a winery or with an individual. I think that's really where you sell more wine as is. So yeah, over the years when I was traveling, I think follow through was always like the big thing. If you're not following up with people, and just even like a quick email note, quick phone call, quick text message, like, hey, how you doing? Like, just always staying engaged with a buyer, or staying engaged with people. I've always kind of been a connector as is with people and within the industry. So, constantly having those touches with people over and over again is really important. But stories definitely are the biggest thing to connect people with, and telling a story, and kind of like what you guys are doing, telling this story about people over the years and the new people coming in that are making wine, and yeah, it's pretty fun.
Well, Andy loves making friends. That's also something. I always joke that Andy has the gift of gab, which it's a great thing when you're in sales.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think all of us, all the family members, are like, yeah, Andy going into wine sales makes complete sense. Like, he is the life of the party.
Especially with like. When I would go out and travel, I mean, I just got back from Spokane. Like my territory is like Northwest Regional, so I have 6 states underneath me, and I don't get to do as much market work as sometimes I'd like to, but a lot of it's a computer work too. So it's like, it's just a lot of making sure pricing is in effect. A lot of it's making sure incentives are going, and tracking those incentives, and on top of tracking, buyers and just making sure programs are getting implemented. So yeah, making sure inventories are good, at the distributor on different levels, because a lot of times, one SKU will get slipped through the crack and be like, wait a minute, why is this? There's only like 2 cases of this left. We need to put up a little bit more cases, or order in some more cases for this. And if we have people coming into town and whatnot, so if we have dinners coming up, or if we have events. So yeah, I mean, I love doing dinners. I've always loved speaking. But yeah, it's definitely one of those industries that it kind of blurs between friends and business, and keeping that business mindset first and foremost, and then also continuing with those friendships. They kind of blend together, though. That's for sure.
Oh, I think you have a gaggle of friends from all over the world from this work. We do.
But you occasionally have to ask them for money, which is always makes it a little awkward.
I've gotten over that.
Yeah.
So tell me about, you talked about starting a project together. You had a conversation about it. What was your vision for it at the outset? How did you get it started?
Yeah, actually, it originally started with me and 2 buddies, and there was probably a decent amount of wine consumed between the 3 of us. But actually, I definitely know there was. But yeah, it was originally going to be 3 of us, and we were just kind of goofing around, and then we were like, hey, maybe we could make this work, and then it kind of fizzled out with one, and it was not a good time for another. So it was just like, I could probably do this on my own. So I started making phone calls, and I started talking with Michael Lundeen. I talked to Cassie about it. Like, I think we could maybe do this on our own. And I definitely didn't lean into Cassie until a little bit later, because I realized, inefficiencies, or maybe not inefficiencies, or maybe just more deficiencies that I have, especially when it comes to like email blasts and marketing stuff, and I'm kind of useless when it comes to that. So, but I originally started talking with Michael Lundeen. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this little project. Don't have a clue on what it's going to be called yet, but he was like, hey, yeah, why don't you come on down? Because, this was probably in 2017.
16. It was 16. Yeah.
And into 2017, I was like, yeah. And he was like, hey, why don't you come down and do some barrel tasting? If you're looking for maybe just like a barrel, I got some stuff in barrel still that I'm probably looking to put in bottle here soon. And it was one of those, I always liked this vineyard that they worked with called La Cantera Vineyard. So it's a great vineyard site. It was planted in the early 80s. It sits kind of right above like Rex Hill Winery off of Quarry Road. So it's a little bit higher elevation. It's actually technically the Laurelwood AVA now. But just some amazing Pinot Noirs coming from that vineyard. So I ended up tasting through probably about 12 different barrels, and we blended 2 together, and yeah, that's how it started, 25 cases. So I was like, let's do this. And so then I leaned in with Cassie because I just couldn't do everything on my own, plus with a full-time job, it was just starting, it was too much for one person to handle. So leaned in with her, and she started helping a lot with a little bit more of the marketing stuff, label development. What else did you do?
Well, do you know what it entails to start a business? There's a lot of work that goes into it. And so I feel like I did a lot of the background work, which calls, getting your LLCC license, ensuring that we had a lawyer on record.
We may have not been compliant for a little bit.
Figured things out thanks to my due diligence and my really strong project management background. I will toot my own horn that there was a great opportunity to improve our business. And that's when I decided, after a good offer, that I have to become majority owner in Andrew Minor Wines, that I would say yes based off of some stipulations in what it is to run a business as a couple. Yeah. It is. There's a lot of work that goes into running even just a small. We do 250 cases a year.
Yeah, depending on the year.
Yeah, and there are lots of behind the scenes things, making sure we are compliant, but also thinking about the vision of what we want to grow, what we don't want to grow. But I remember those early days of deciding that we were going to go into business. Quite frankly, before even all this happened, and before that late night conversation with our friends, we are the couple that people would we have so many wonderful friends. I mean, we are very lucky. And a lot of people are getting married. So there's a lot of weddings and a lot of events happening. And already,
still to this day,
we were kind of the referral couple. Hey, Cassie and Andy, we'll ask them for, do they know what good wine to pour at this wedding? How much wine should we pour? Where should we get this wine? And next thing you know, we have so many connections, either winemakers or just through distributors, so we were already schlepping wine, taking wine to weddings, taking wines to events, being that kind of go-to source of information for people who didn't really know what they wanted. I mean, these are in our 20s. People didn't know what they wanted. Yeah. So we are kind of already built up this recognition of being this kind of good referral source. And I think at that point, to me, we were already buying a bunch of the wine that wine was coming from. So La Cantera Vineyard, the wine that John Gilpin and John Davidson were producing, what was the...
Bernard Machado.
We were drinking a lot of Bernard Machado, and I'm like, if we're already just drinking a lot of this, and we're bringing this to every wine party, why don't we just buy some of it? Let's get into this. Let's have fun with it. I already had a social media marketing background, communication, I could do this, and event planning background.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because they're in partnerships in business and in partnerships in life, sometimes there is a person that is the gas, and sometimes there's the person that's the brakes. I'm definitely the gas. We should do more of this, and Cassie's like, nope.
Let's think through all the options.
Let's maybe slow your roll down a little bit. So it's a good balance between the two of us. I think we, with my background in wine and having the connections, especially with Michael helping out a lot with us, is great to have. He's a really thoughtful individual, and he's a great winemaker. So
incredible winemaker.
Yeah, so he helps out quite a bit. But if I didn't work for him, this may have not happened.
Yeah.
So
one of the things that I love about Michael, so Michael got to meet my grandmother and I know my parents, and I did my 30th birthday with Walnut City Wine Works. We'd already had this built-in community and friendship with him and Desiree and their family, and going into business with them was like nothing scary because we had established these friendships and relationships. And to me, that was like, absolutely, I'd love to help him, because at that point he was building out his custom crush clients and thinking about how to utilize that facility in a different way, in a way that allowed more of us to kind of get in. And one of the things I will credit Michael too is, like, I'm not as experienced in wine, but having him be so patient and open, and if I am curious around the science behind it, or letting me get my hands dirty and really being a part of the crush, the punch down and filling up barrels, or even, my dad is so involved in our business. It is really a family affair, to where my dad and Michael are dear friends, and my dad has helped build out my dad does construction, so he helped build out the new tasting room at Walnut City and knows Lacey and the family, and it is, it's pretty awesome to be a part of something like that, because it can be scary. It does cost money to run a business, and you want to hope that your money is going towards something that's building a better place. Also, Michael does an incredible job with his vineyard management and the stewards that manage the land. So I really feel an honor that the resources that we support helps the steward and land management, and also the caring of the people who are picking the grapes. I know he does an incredible job from everybody he hires. So I think that was really important to me as we were thinking about our business.
So tell me about you. Now you have wine. You've chosen to name it after yourself. You got wine with your name on the label. Tell me about what it's like selling your own wine after years of selling other people's wine.
Gosh, it's funny too, because I feel like I love talking about like other people's wines more so than I like talking about our wines, which kind of makes me like the worst salesperson ever for us. But it's really, it's fun. It's fun to when we do bring people together, when we throw like parties. Oftentimes we'll throw our holiday or pickup parties here at the Oregon Wine Reserve. We don't have a tasting room. We don't, everything's kind of word of mouth. But we've built such a great community of people around us that people just support us because of who we are, and the wine's pretty good too. But we get a good community of people together, and we're always adding more people into the mix. So it's always it's pretty fun to see a final product all from start to finish, and then to see people's reactions to being to tasting it. We had contracts for wines, for the smoke in 2020. So we did make a little bit of wine that had a little bit of smoke taint to it. But Michael did a really great job to help get as much of it out as possible. But we've had some years that it was just like, oh, that's a little different this year. But yeah, it's been a really, I think, great last few years. And we're trying to find the best, the right amount to purchase, the right amount of fruit to purchase, and seeing what's worked and what doesn't. This might be the last year of our rosé, because Pinot Noir is getting really expensive. So if we can find some other fruit, to maybe Southern Oregon or Eastern Washington, to make a rosé, maybe we'll do that. But it's everybody's got a rosé now too.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things, again, the group of friends, we have so many amazing different pods and groups of ages and backgrounds, and I think one of the things that we've always done is try to make wine approachable and affordable, and I've there's been so many times with these wine dinners or events where you really can witness classism, or you can really feel excluded, and you don't want to ask the questions. And I mean, we are really bringing in a very diverse group of people who are supporting our wines that we're trying to make it really approachable, and that is super cool to see people go, wow, I never knew that there's actually the different, what is an AVA, we've got Carlton Hill, we have La Cantera, we can compare. We also have library wines. You can taste the difference from our 2017 to our 2021. What is drinking now, what is wines that you want to library, and teaching that to people who would never even know that, wine can lay down. You can cellar it. What is a cellar? I mean, this is a really cool place to host, because a lot of people have, wine storage, and they are cellaring wines, and some people you buy then and drink now. They're not even thinking about tomorrow. They're thinking about the moment.
I mean, it's crazy, and I can't remember the exact number, but it's something like 98.5% of all wine purchase is consumed within 24 hours, and it's even higher at 48 hours. So it's nice because we always kind of library like a couple cases back just to see how it goes over time. And some years we've done a little bit more, and some years we've done a little bit less. I think our inaugural vintage, we might have a case left. But like 2018, we have like 7 or 8 cases. So it's nice to be able to show people like, hey, you just purchased the 2021, but look at what we did in 2018. Look how this wine has evolved over time, and how it's tasting now. And now that's had some time to settle down a little bit and cellar for a little bit. Coming from the same vineyard site, but different vintage. Different temperatures those years, and just seeing how the wine will evolve over time too, which is really kind of fun to see people's excitement about the wine, being like, oh, this is what maybe I should be cellaring some of your wines, for the next few years. So.
And we have people who are wine club members that have them, and I also think about just so many helping hands. I mean, when you launch a business and you are new, we've had so many people help us out, from washing dishes to, making sure there's food on a table and bussing stuff. We used to actually serve like a meal with some of our wine tastings, and so we put on, just really fun events. But just the fact that, and then from mom and dad and your parents, everybody coming here and coming together, and we always have a good shift dinner together and celebrate like what we did. And there's just so much pride. I think there's also friends that are really proud of us and want to see us succeed. And now we're meeting all these, at least for me, I'm meeting all these incredible women and women of color, particularly Latina women, who are doing they're pioneers, and being able to feel included. I think of Christina Gonzalez. I think of Donna Stoney, who's doing some incredible work, who makes her wines through Michael Lundin. I think of Sofia Terez with Curamosi, and I think of these people who have opened the door. And I always think about how I can help lift them up too, and do collaboration. That's been super fun for me, is to okay, if I can get a free event space, you guys want to do a tasting with me? Or for me, also connecting with small businesses. I have a couple I love jewelry, I love plants, and there's a couple places nearby in Multnomah Village that I love, Magpie Metals, that have done wine events for us, or just really fun, unique collaborations that we're going to be pouring our wine at this awesome event from Miso, which is a nonprofit. My girlfriend and I met through my nonprofit work, and they're featuring Latino speakers, and we're going to be the featured wine. So it's a really cool, just things that you would never think, and things that people come together in creative minds, and so many of those things have happened over the years.
I could probably be a little bit better at, when I'm seeing accounts, telling them about my wine and our wine. Most people know, but I never really. I always think about my job first before I think about our wines.
I'm working on my sales pitch.
It's very noble of you. Prioritize other people's wines. Tell me about the wine itself. What was important to you? What's important to you in the wines you're producing? What do you want them to display?
I guess you want them to have a sense of place. I feel like every time I would open up a bottle of, when we were talking about earlier, the La Cantera Bernard Machado wine that John Davidson would make from La Cantera, I always got this like strawberry rhubarb. I always got like baking spice notes like nutmeg and cinnamon. So my grandfather used to bake strawberry rhubarb pies. So every time I would have that wine, it would give me that. It would remind me of when he used to bake these pies when I would always go to his house, him and my grandmother's house. So I just kind of fell in love with that. But I think the wines you want to have a sense of place. I mean, if minimal intervention in the wines, like we're not using any new oak, we're using used barrels. You don't want to manipulate it. You want it to kind of show through from where it's coming from. So I think Michael helps us a lot with that, and just making sure that wines are getting like picked on at the right time, but yeah, definitely you want to have a sense of place, and I think with Pinot Noir especially, with the different terroirs. I mean, we're getting stuff from David Polite's vineyard at Carlton Hill Vineyard. We usually do about a barrel of that every year. But the drastic differences between the La Cantera and the Carlton Hill is pretty amazing. Carlton Hill, I always find that has a little bit more broader shoulders, a little bit more tannin, a little bit bigger. You can definitely see it in the color as well. Yeah. Whereas the La Cantera is more lighter, more pretty. More of those red fruits where you're getting in Carlton Hill, more almost brambly fruit notes, like red to like almost blackberry, but not quite. It's just a little bit of like raspberry to almost blackberry. So, but those vineyards are maybe 15 miles apart from one another, if you're maybe even less than that if you're just going straight across. But the big differences between those two specific AVAs.
I think one of the things about us, we do make a good pair in the sense of, we have different palates, but I am thinking about who is, if I don't love it, then I don't want to have something I want to share with our community. If it's not something that we can have forever, if nobody ever buys it and we have to keep it forever, then I know that that's something that we can stand behind, that I know I'm really proud of what we put out in the market. And I feel like every wine we've put forward, it's something that I would drink, I would bring to your best friend, I would bring to family and have honor behind it. And I think that when I do think of our Pinot, it's been very consistent. The La Cantera one, it really, to me, it's like an elegant Pinot. It's something that reminds me of quintessential Oregon. It is it's so light in a perfect way. And that is something that I'm more attracted to when it comes to different wines. We released a Pinot Gris that we sold out of. That one we sold out of, but that one, when we sampled that and we were on our way to kind of making some final decisions, I was like, this is going to sell out. I mean, I just knew it. You just knew when something is so delicious and yummy and you want to share it with people.
We also put a label on it that was really cool. It was Cassie's grandmother. It was a picture of her. It was called Maria de la Luz. So it was paying homage to Cassie's grandmother who basically migrated here from Texas and immigrated into the U.S. at a very young age from Mexico. So we wanted to put something on there that paid homage to her family, and it was a really fun label, and we were like, dang it, we should have made more
opportunities.
Yeah.
I think
that's always next year.
That's also something I've been having a lot of fun with, is like thinking about not only the thing that you're producing, but what story goes along. What is the I get to tell my family stories through some of our wine, and that is such a gift that my family really does see it as a tribute to her, and she really did have quite a legacy and left a mark. And so the fact that we get to do that is something of great pride to my whole family. The Salinas and Sanchez family they are definitely big supporters, so it's a nice gift that we get to do.
So you talk about the growth up to 250 cases a year. Tell me about next steps. Are there milestones you haven't reached yet that you want to reach? Are there future goals that you're aiming for?
You know, we try to get together about once every quarter to just really sit down and figure out like, okay, what do we need to do? Or actually, we usually do it like once a month. But like, yeah, I mean, you know, this last year going back to like economy stuff, and we were talking before we were taping about, you know, the ups and downs of the business, and you know, right now it's definitely on a downturn at the moment. So you know, a lot of people are drinking less. There's people, you know, millennials and younger that are doing different things. There's people that are just going completely sober, and there's not a lot of brand loyalty with a lot of the younger generation. So we're really combating that in the industry alone right now. So we're kind of taking a little bit of a step back on this next vintage, on the 2024 vintage, because we're already looking at, you know, what we're going to be purchasing. So we're only probably going to make about 100 cases this year. Also going into a potential recession. Let's hope it's not. But going into definitely a downturn at the moment is definitely what we're looking at right now. So trying to be mindful of how much we make. And you know, there's a lot of really great wine out there.
Yeah.
So you know, making sure that we're on top of other people's minds when we're doing our events, and making sure that we're not making too much of this or too little of that. So it's always that kind of that fine line of trying to make the perfect amount of wine, which there's never a perfect.
No. Again, I think all of that I agree. I think for me, it's I want to be even more intentional with who we're doing business with, who we're lifting up, what small businesses we're supporting, particularly, again, women of color. I want to find ways to collaborate, and that's from the like label design to where we host our events to how we're thinking about costing, a cost model. So I think we've got I want to be really intentional for next year. We both have full-time jobs, and I think we recognize, like, you know, you can say yes, but to what point? And so for us, we're thinking about how do we also squeeze in, you know, even some more travel and other adventures along the way. And again, being mindful too that you know, election years and recession are all compounding factors to how we need to be if we're going to sustain this business over the long haul. So I think that's something I'm definitely being mindful of. How do we keep this going for longer, more years?
I think it'd be nice in like the next 5 to 7 years if we're making, you know, anywhere from like 300 to 500 cases. I think that would be something. It would be great to see. But I don't know. Like, I mean, it's just trying to balance everything, right? Like trying to balance your full-time job, your social life, family, and
Health,
everything.
Yeah.
You know, like, and again, going back to, we love to travel. We just got back from Italy back in May. We got to see some of the properties that I represent in Italy as well, which was amazing. So yeah, I mean, just trying to balance life and work and our own business can be challenging. You know, it can be really challenging.
Social life. I thought you gave that up when you got into wine. I'm pretty sure that was one of the.
But see, they merge together.
It absolutely merges together. Some of our dearest friends and best friends come from the wine industry.
Yeah. So we're very, very, very lucky.
Outside of wine, anything else on your horizons, personally or professionally, that you're excited about? Or not outside of wine, outside of your own personal business.
Well, my company, I said earlier, they're celebrating their 20-year anniversary, and we're based in New York. So we're doing a big 20-year anniversary party in September. So, and significant others are invited. So, so we're going out to New York for a few days. I'm looking forward to some really good food. Last time we were in New York, we got to eat at Les Bernardins, which is 3 Michelin star restaurant, and it's unbelievable. So. And I think next year we're talking about maybe going to France next year. So maybe either 2025 or 2026. But I'd like to go actually see some of the properties that we have in France, go to Champagne, maybe go to the Loire, maybe go to Burgundy or the Rhone. Yeah, kind of all the above. So we love going to Italy though, and definitely Europe is definitely some of our happy place to go to. So yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm really being able to see the merge of like my professional and personal life come together in the last like 4 or 5 years, and I'm thinking more about how I feel like I'm a bridge builder and a connector, and I'm really thinking about just women who do diversity, equity, inclusion work, and also women who are in the wine industry, but also these small business owners. And I've been thinking about how to set more intentional and like nurturing and curated spaces. So I've been thinking about how to bring more people together, and that probably will be over a glass of wine and over a good meal that I hope I will find a small business that will help me do a dinner. So I'd like to do something like that, a little more intentional. Those connections will be more important as I continue to grow in this world and also in my other professional life. And we just bought a new home, so we're kind of in this like nesting phase. So we're building out a beautiful wine cellar, and we're booking out. We're like the new Airbnb, and we have, I think, couples staying with us every other weekend. And so I look forward to just reconnecting with friends that we didn't get to see throughout the pandemic, and watch our friends.
And over the holiday too.
And over the holiday, hosted our house, and just we've got a lot of beautiful community, and I can't wait to watch them grow. So we've got a lot of that to look forward to.
Last question for the two of you then, and you can both answer this. I would love for you both to answer this. Proudest achievement or biggest accomplishment? What are you proudest of so far?
I was gonna say something funny, but it like staying married throughout this entire. No, just kidding.
I mean, I was actually gonna say that. I was gonna say that.
I mean, it takes a lot, right? I mean, just having like business partnerships, personal relationship. I mean, they're all never easy, right? Like, there's always going to be times where they can get tumultuous, especially when you're traveling in Italy and I'm driving. And we did good last time, though. But yeah, I think having a business partner and also a life partner, I mean, it poses challenges, but I guess just having better communication and I think it's probably made us stronger as a couple. I think it's definitely when there's times that are like, oh, the bank account's kind of low, we need to send an email blast out to get some funds in. There's always that kind of, okay, like we need to really sit down and discuss the next 6 months and how we're going to move forward, getting events going, getting other things going, because again, we don't have a tasting room, so we don't have a space where we call home as like our home base. So, constantly getting new ideas to try to, talking to, I mean, we go out to Cannon Beach usually once a year and do an event or two out there with like the wine shack and
I think you just interviewed him.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, you did.
Literally went live today.
That's funny.
Well, he's a dear friend too.
Yeah.
How lucky.
Yeah, we've known him for a long time. A really good guy. But yeah, just always trying to figure out new ways of introducing more people to our wine and collaborate. But I think I guess biggest achievement in that sense for our business is just getting closer together and creating something kind of amazing. Work-wise, I don't know. Like on my side, like I don't know, I've gotten to do some pretty amazing stuff. I mean, we've been able to travel to Italy and Portugal and stay at some really amazing places. I mean, just over the years, going to China with Basil Cellars, that was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that we'll probably never do that again, but you never know. And then I also did years ago, I did a dinner at the James Beard House when I was in Walnut City. So I got to host a dinner at the James Beard House, which was really, really fun and crazy all at the same time, because it was around the same time that Hurricane Sandy hit. And it was right after Hurricane Sandy hit, and then there was a snowstorm that came into Manhattan, and it was like we were going kind of blind. Like they still hadn't reopened the Beard House, and we were just like, okay. It was Chef Holland, who was over in Astoria. He used to own Baked Alaska, and he owned a couple other restaurants out there. And I was like, "Are you still going out to this?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "If everything goes awry, then I guess we'll just eat and drink really well." All right,
You gotta go.
And yeah, so I got to go out, and they decided the night before that they were going to do the dinner that next night. So they had just gotten power back that day before. So we were on. They had to scramble to get a few other people in because a lot of cancellations happened because, again, there was still parts of Manhattan that were underwater, but they made it happen, and they filled the place, and yeah. And that was pretty fun. That was pretty amazing. But I've gotten to do some pretty amazing stuff in just being in the business. So, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would just build on what it is to have a relationship and a healthy marriage and a partnership that to span over decades, and to go from being 18 years old together to launching and running a successful business, to having an abundance of friendships and relationships all over the world that I'm really proud of. I'm really proud of us. I'm proud of I think of people who look to us as what it is to have this, and I'm honored for that. I think we had great role models. We had our parents that really shaped our worlds, but we're still doing it and figuring it out. And we don't have kiddos, but we have wine babies. So these are our things that we do together that we make a conscious decision to stay together and do this work. And I think that that's a big accomplishment that it is so integrated and entwined to our lives, just the business and all of us. So I think that's something I'm really proud of. Yeah, and I think about so many things to be proud of in my other professional world, but I think mainly blazing trails and opening doors for others, because in the work that I do, we're going to need more of us to continue to ask the questions that really challenge us as a region, as a state, and we need to be asking who's not in the room and who should be in the room. So I think just the fact that there's more people like myself in positions of power and leadership, and I know I had a hand in that process. I'm really proud of that. So, my time at Metro, I'm really proud of that legacy that I've been able to provide.
It's fantastic. All the questions that I have for the two of you, anything I didn't ask that I should have, or anything we didn't cover today that you wanted to cover?
No,
I think that's it.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much, sharing your time with us, sharing your story with us, sharing this great space with us. Thanks for making this happen.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
okay,
Awesome.
thank you.
So much.